Hi,
Hey there,
you did it.
we're here.
Thanks for joining on my first Substack Live.
Yeah, it's my first too, so happy to.
Oh, amazing. Well, I realized I got something wrong already. I somehow put that you found your passion at 14, but it was actually 12,
It's true.
which is
12 years old.
crazy. 12 years old. Wow, there's people on here too. Hi, everyone. I guess, I guess I will give just a tiny background on you before we get started. I'm super excited about this conversation. So, we are joined today by Justin Barker, San Francisco based TV producer, author of the book Bear Boy, which I just read and is amazing. So, please check it out, and an animal activist. So, starting at age 12, crazy. Justin led the campaign to move two black bears from it was the Roseville Zoo, right, in California,
Yeah.
and you succeeded. Um, and yeah, that story is whole crazy, and you've done so many things since, but it's all been around this realm of basically standing up for animals, as you said, and particularly zoo animals. So I'd love to hear like why are you so passionate about that?
Yeah, I mean, it started when I was 12 years old, like you said. And it was kind of a unique thing that happened. My dad basically, summer was starting, and my dad's like, "What are you going to do this summer?" And I was like, "I'm going to stay at home and watch Nickelodeon and eat large bowls of
Of
cereal. That's
course.
what I'm going to do." And my dad was like, "Actually, you're not. You're not going to do and then just almost by chance, I found a used book at a bookstore, and it was about animal rights. And
Mm,
that I opened the book. The first chapter I read was about factory farming, and I was like, okay, I'm going vegetarian. I literally went vegetarian in the bookstore and has been vegetarian ever since. And then when I got home, I read the chapter in that book about captivity and how
mm,
animals are impacted by captivity, negatively impacted. That you put an animal that travels large distances in a small cage. What does that do for them? And
mm,
I was totally moved by that.
mm.
By that, and that kind of at the time I didn't really fully understand why, it just was like I was moved by that story.
Sure.
Very quickly, I was like, Dad, I'm not going to sit on the couch. I'm not going to eat large bowls of cereal. I need you to let me go. I need you to take me to the Sacramento Zoo every day. And it just became like it was summertime. He'd drop me off, and I would go and investigate,
Mm,
start making friends with keepers who like fed information to me. And that really started the whole this, like as you said, obsession with standing up for zoo animals. And
mm.
now, like 30 years later, we're still doing it.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
take me back just a little bit before that book, because I'm always so interested, like how people become passionate about something. Sometimes it is like a one thing just like that, and sometimes it builds over time. Did you particularly love animals like when you were younger?
I was really into Jane Goodall. Like I loved Jane Goodall's story as a
You
kid.
even knew her as a kid? Oh, that's so
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. And so I was really into her story. And I very vividly remember um, Target. My parents didn't really shop at Target, but Target had this like environmental, like a monthly little magazine that they would put out, and it was about like how kids can help the environment. And
Mm,
I remember always being like telling my parents like, oh, it's the new month, like can we drive to Target? And I'd run into Target and grab that little magazine. So like
mm,
I was always into like the story about the rainforest, and like so it was always like in me about
yeah.
animals, the environment. So that kind of, I reckon that was from like just like from birth, was what I
Yeah.
was passionate about those things.
Yeah.
um that book was really the, like when I was able to not just like think about it or
Right.
hope for change. That book really was a very actionable guide. So
Yeah.
that's really pivoted from like ideas to like, oh, you
Mm.
actually as a young person could have an
Mm.
impact. So that's
Yeah, that's so
it.
interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but I, at about 6 years old, declared to my family that I would be a vegetarian because I connected it to animals. And I have had, since birth, I just love animals so much. So
Yeah.
we share something there.
I love that. I love that.
And I mean, people watching this probably don't know about your whole story about saving the bears. Can you just give us a quick like overview? It's just amazing because you were 12 years old when you started doing this, and it became, you said in your book, like a full-time obsession.
Totally.
Um,
Like
yeah.
totally preoccupied.
Had you wait, one quick caveat or question. Had you ever been like really obsessed with something before? Or was
Not
this like the first thing?
That was the first thing. That was
Mm,
absolutely the first thing. Like
yeah.
total preoccupation,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
blinders on. Like this was, this was the first time in my life that I
yeah.
was very, like, obsessed.
That's
So
so interesting.
yeah,
Okay, so yeah, give us a little overview.
yeah. I
I
mean,
highly recommend everyone read the book, but
yeah. It really was with the Sacramento Zoo. Like I started going,
Mm,
and very quickly, like I was saying, the zookeeper started feeding information to me, and I started doing the work, bringing in animal rights organizations, and started writing letters to like the AZA, and which is like the accrediting body of the zoos,
mm,
and that campaign led to like front page stories about animal neglect at the zoo. And then the
yeah.
AZA tabled the accreditation of Sacramento, and it was this huge story. And that kind of was like, whoa, this is super. I have, as a 12-year-old, have like the ability to like sway, you know, the narrative in like the newspaper, like have major international or national bodies like make major decisions. It was huge. But part of that was the zoo director called me. I called the zoo director up one day, and she said, "You're slandering my name, and if you continue, I'm going to sue you."
Did
And
she know how old you were?
of course, she knew exactly who I was and how old I was.
So
But
crazy.
yeah, and that like to some degree, my parents didn't necessarily know like the details of what was happening, but like at dinner that
Mm,
night when I was like, I just talked to the zoo director and she threatened to sue me. Their response was, she's not going to sue you, she's going to sue us, and you have to stop what you're doing immediately.
yeah.
Like they were
Wow.
like, you're done. And then, like I feel like sometimes I just want to say that it's like fate or like kismet, or I
Mm,
don't know how to describe it, but like within a week of that happening, I ended up getting a letter from a woman who had no idea that I was a 13-year-old. She was just writing to my organization, Citizens Lobbying for Animals in Zoos. And she said, there's these two bears living in this tiny
mm,
cage on the edge of a creek that floods every few years. It's terrible conditions. Like, can you help?
yeah.
And then that really just started a like 3-year, campaign obsession to get those bears out of there. And
Mm,
essentially, it was the last cage in this tiny little zoo, and the city. I basically had to like fight the city to say, "Will you free the bears if I can find a home for them?" And I remember calling the mayor at home and telling him about the bears, and he's like, "Oh, I was a kid, like those bears were born in that cage and they're gonna die in that cage," is what they told me. And that was my like rallying
mm,
moment. Was like, I was like, I'm gonna prove him wrong, that those bears will not die in that cage. And then the campaign unfolded over 3 years. It went from them agreeing to release the bears to being like, okay, we found a home of sanctuary for the bears, but we need $250,000. And that became the campaign, was telling the story about Brutus and Ursula, and then raising
mm,
$250,000 to like get their like home built. So
yeah.
that was like how I spent much of my adolescence. all of
Amazing.
my.
It's a really incredible story, as I'm sure you can recognize now, being a little older
Yeah.
and wiser. I've many questions about this. One is, so it seems like when you first found the book, you started to become passionate about this, and then with Brutus and Ursula, the bears, I love those names. It seems like it became more of an obsession and like a total tunnel vision. Do you feel like those are different? Like having like a passion is different than obsession? I'm always curious about these kind of things. And where does calling fit into this? Do you feel like you were like called at all, or does none of this resonate with you?
Yeah, no, it totally resonates. I feel like it was a calling, like especially like sometimes when like the way things lined up, like the like you
Mm,
can't do this campaign, you can't do this anymore, but the letter shows like it just feels like almost like sometimes I just feel like a vehicle for these like a things.
mm,
It's like
yeah.
bigger than me that I'm just like, you know, a vehicle. That
Yeah.
certainly feels like the part of it. And I don't know, like I, at the time as a young person, I think honestly, I don't know if I would call it passion. I think it was like at the time obsession, and the
Mm,
obsession was like it was kind of twofold. One was
mm,
the mission to relocate the bears, and like make sure like whatever I needed to do to make that happen was the obsession.
yeah.
But also part of that was the like storytelling around the impact of captivity. Like for me, it was like,
Mm,
oh, this is just one story about how bad like putting an animal in a cage is. So
right.
that was part of the that was part of it too, was that like making sure that through the bear's story that people also just like understood like how, you know, maybe just took a moment to think about like, oh, this is putting animals in cages is not the move.
Mm. Um, yeah, that makes sense. Another thing I was wondering, so I feel like I've been like a very late bloomer with finding passions in my life, and I've always been envious of people who found a passion or obsession super young.
Mhm.
But I also wonder if it was super isolating, and if it was hard because you're surrounded at the age by kids that are just kind of sitting on the couch watching Nickelodeon and eating cereal and not necessarily calling up people all day and having a singular focus. I'm just curious how that was for you.
You know, honestly, it was life changing, like this
Mm,
animal activism, because like I was
mm,
a pretty like lonely, isolated kid until the bears, really.
mm.
And you know what happened was like I just started calling, you know, the long distance calling because it was still like we were still in the
Right,
90s.
right.
I just started calling and networking with animal activists all over the country. And it was
Mm,
like, I call this person and they'd say, talk to this person. And
mm,
so I quickly built a network of adults
mm.
and activists who were like,
Right.
became like my community, like, you know, over the phone community. And so that was really a big, that was like
Mm,
life changing, was being able to have mentors who were like helping
mm,
on those bad days, like coaching me or giving me advice or just like have somebody to talk to. That was huge. Like that, the community that it built was really important. And then in time, because the bear story became like a national news story and like regularly on local news, um, everyone at school was like, "Bear boy, you're Bear boy." Like people like became like knew me for this project,
Interesting.
would be like, "Oh, I saw you on the
Um,
news last night,"
huh.
and so it was that was important too. Was that there was
Yeah.
like there was certainly like support
Mm,
around
that's
it,
cool.
and then you know what that ends up doing in the long term of just like the confidence building of like I can talk to adults, like people are recognizing the value of this, or like maybe they're recognizing the value of being on TV. I don't know how much they cared about the project,
Right.
but you know like that built some confidence in me, and that's really when I like
Mm,
found my friend group, my people
Mm,
at
interesting.
school, separate from like the activism. Just so that was cool.
Mm, yeah, that's great, and that's a great point. I what I've seen, because I've been interviewing passionate people like from all kind of backgrounds for a few years, and that one of the most amazing things about having a passion is really that community that gets built through it. And I feel like a lot of people don't quite understand that that's going to be such a big part of it when going into it. You know, you have this like thing that you or a cause that they're passionate about, but then it becomes about like the people involved. And I just think it's really amazing.
It's a huge part of it. And it's like the thing, you find your people who are like are obsessed or like passionate about this thing, and then like that just like they connect you with more people. It's very powerful.
Yeah. Um, okay. I'm curious, like, can you take us through the moment, how you felt emotionally when Brutus and Ursula were like finally moved? Like, how did you feel?
I mean, it was pretty powerful because Brutus and Ursula, there was I touched them for the first time because when they when they put them down to move them,
Yeah.
I was able to go in the cage and touch Brutus for the first time. So being able to just like, be in the presence of this bear, it was like very powerful. And
Wow.
then I just remember driving with my mom, like we were driving and trailing the two, trucks that the bears were on. And I just wept the entire time because that, like, all of that work, like to be able to see like all of that work and that obsession and that like steadfastness that like that you can create things in the world, and like and that was particularly moving because not only were they never going to live in that cage again, that like there was like hopefully some sort of like less harm being caused to them, but also just
Mm,
the knowing of like my power as a young person, like it's super powerful.
yeah, it's so amazing. What happened after it? Did you channel your passion immediately into something else? Did you feel a void? Like, it's it's crazy. I mean, you think of this like with, the Olympians right now too. Like they're putting their entire life into one thing, and then all of a sudden it's just gone. And then what?
Right.
So I'm so curious about this part of your story. What did you
Yeah,
do?
like the Bears got moved, and that was like, I was in my senior year of
Mm,
high school, basically, like moving into my senior year of high school. And I very much went into like, spending time with friends, like preparing for like, am I going to college?
yeah.
Still like passionate about, I was still showing up, dressing up as like, random characters for PETA protests. Like I was doing like random things, but the it was I definitely took a pause on it,
Mm,
like the my going into like studying and just being like a 18-year-old. I moved to London. Being an 18-year-old,
wow.
like partying in London is where I like focus my energy. uh,
Nice.
and yeah, it took a long time, like that, like that was particularly challenging because there was a moment where I was like, oh, like I felt, because it was 2020, sorry, 2000, I can't even say that, 2001.
Mm,
um
right.
I like it quickly was like the world has so many problems,
Mm,
so many
yeah.
humans are getting harmed, and it was really challenging to like for a long time for me to justify that I could be like an animal activist um
Interesting.
and speak up, like to speak up for animals when like so much harm was being caused globally, like. And you just
Mm,
have this like from the 90s to the early 2000s, this like rude awakening of like, oh wow, like so many things were unfolding. I ended up as an intern at CBS News in London, and like seeing like the Afghan war unfold. There's just a lot happened in the, early 2000s. And it took me a long, long time. There was this long break where I just felt like I didn't have a right
Mm.
to talk about animal rights. That felt like I couldn't justify it. And it took a long time to like refine that and like give myself permission to do that.
How did how did you?
I was in my 20s. I was in my late 20s. I'd moved to San Francisco and I had done this like month-long meditation retreat. And
Oh.
the very last day of this meditation retreat, we did the death meditation. And essentially, we all are in a circle, everyone that participated in this yoga thing, and somebody comes in and starts beating the drum and like a heartbeat. And they're like, you have 12 hours to live. And the drum's beating, and it's like, what did you regret? What would you say to the people that you love? And
Wow.
it just like started just going through it. And I just started sobbing. And I was like, I never helped another zoo animal.
Oh, wow.
Holy shit. That was, and so to be at the end of my life and be like, all I did was help Brutus and Ursula, and I never continued
Mm.
this thing. And that literally within, a few days of that revelation, I was like, I have to tell the Bear Boy story. Like, cause there's, as like, I work in production, TV production, storytelling, like the Bear
Mm.
Boy story kind of like lived in my head and it would like play out. It was a real story, obviously, but like the way in which I would like try to frame this story, it was like, it was very in my head. And I was
Mm.
like, I have to write the book.
Mm.
So I started writing Bear Boy in 2011,
Oh.
and then it took me 10 years to write Bear Boy, and
You're not alone. Books are hard.
they are hard. So
I I
yeah,
work with a lot of book people, and one of the people is 18 years, so 10 is 10
yeah,
isn't bad.
yeah, it's not bad, but yeah, 10 years and like yeah. So that book came out in 2021,
Mm.
and that was like part of my activism. I felt like being able to like
Yeah.
tell the story of being a young person helping animals also was like telling the story about the impacts of captivity on animals. And um so that was like kind of the resurgence for me
Mm.
of really getting back into this work. and
Mm.
and now I feel I'm really actively jumping ahead a little bit with the actively involved in transitioning the San Francisco Zoo into an eco park. Um,
Yeah.
but this moment is particularly challenging too
Mm.
because there's so much happening in the world. Like there's so much happening, and there's so much activism and speaking up that needs to happen. And luckily, I feel really like if everyone just like picked their like thing that they were really passionate about and that they were like good at and like focused there, that we would like the world would be really different. And so I feel
Clearly, I agree.
yeah, yeah. And so I feel like even with all of the things happening that are like problematic and so
Mm.
much speaking up that's needed, I feel very comfortable being like, I'm going to focus on this local issue. This is something
Mm.
I'm good at. This is something that I can like like create change in. Uh,
Yeah.
and so uh, that noise, in my all the noise that happened when I was in my 20s, I don't know. I guess I needed to have that moment to like be able to overcome those feelings in this one. So
Mhm.
that's pretty cool.
Mm. That's so cool. Um, I feel like people, well, I know that a lot of people when they think of passion, they think of just like the highs. Like I feel so excited about things and like having progress and working toward goals. But in my experience talking to passionate people, there are a lot of blows. Like it's like much more like this than kind of a less passionate way of living, which is like a straighter line. Can you talk about some of your lows or your struggles along the way?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly like, there's always like, it is like peaks and valleys, you know, like there's like really fun moments, and then there's just like the like, this is not fun, you know, like this is like feels uncomfortable and not great.
Mhm,
You know, I can talk about like a current example where, you know, like I've spent the last two years really talking about the problems. San Francisco Zoo is one of the worst zoos in the country. And,
mhm,
and I built, you know, a whole like activism journalism project called SF Zoo Watch. And that meant showing up to meetings at City Hall regularly and being in a room with a lot of hostile people,
mm,
people that do not like your opinion, people who will call you names when you walk out of that room, people that will like come after you and like verbally online, and that's really challenging. Like, and this like walking to this like meet, you know, this monthly meeting every month, I am so uncomfortable. My heart is racing. I feel so uncomfortable, and but I still keep moving. I keep walking towards that
mm.
thing, and I walk through those doors. And so this is like a monthly thing that
Oh my
gets
gosh.
me so out of my comfort zone and feels so uncomfortable. But
Mm,
you know, because you know, in that meeting, I'm speaking up about like you know, the zoo says this like kind of greenwashing, like not particularly honest thing, and I, you know, am like this the truth teller about things, speaking up and saying, actually, this is like, you know, repositioning it for people. And so just knowing like, okay, I need to do this, even though I'm in this like very adversarial situation.
mm,
That kind of that gets me through. And then also the one thing, my ritual is playing Taylor Swift's "Look What You Made Me Do," and I like before I walk into that meeting, I blast Taylor Swift "Look What You Made Me Do," and that like gets me in the zone. But
that's
that
awesome.
that's really in this moment that just like stands out as, oh, this is so
Mm,
uncomfortable, but I'm gonna power through. I'm gonna keep going. That's like a dip every month.
yeah.
A
Well,
Yeah,
I think a lot. I talked to a lot of sports psychologists about passion, and it seems to me like a lot of people think of passion again, it's like they think of it just as like the fun parts, but ultimately it comes down to a commitment to this thing that you love. And it seems like you go through that monthly, like even though it sucks at times, you're just so committed that you're able to kind of override those feelings and just like push through it.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an important thing. Like because the why is what keeps me anchored. I'm like, okay, I have to do this for the animals. Like I don't think
Mm,
there wasn't that like anchor to like my larger mission or like my obsession, my passion. Like
yeah.
I could muster the energy to like walk through and walk into a room of people who are like, you know, have disdain for me or my opinions or whatever it is, you know.
Yeah. Um, well, we're gonna wrap it up because I try to keep these short. And but I'm just curious, do you think that everyone has something that they're passionate about, or are just people wired differently? Um,
I mean, I'd like to hope that everyone has their thing, you know,
yeah.
and maybe they're like, you know, discovered it and like know it in their mind and like need to return to it or haven't discovered it yet. Like I feel
Mm,
um I'd like to hope that everyone has their little piece or their little like piece of the world that like they feel like passionate about, that like they'll jump up in the morning
yeah.
that they're like excited about or like do hard things to achieve, you know, all those things. So yeah, I'd like to believe that everyone
Mm.
has something.
What if they haven't found it yet? Any advice?
I mean, I think that that death meditation is incredibly powerful, and I haven't
Yeah.
mine, but I do think that like when you, as like we're alive and here on this earth, and if like when we push up against death and we're like, okay, like if I'm at the end of my life, like what am I going to, like that, doing that exercise feel, felt like was moving to me. And I feel like pushing up against death, and also the exercise of like, the one other thing that feels important is like thinking about what are the most like painful points, most painful moments in your life. And like
Mm,
I think that like the most painful moments are also like a flag for the things that, like, because that was so painful, like that is like a
mm,
marker for something that was like against your deeply held beliefs.
mm.
And like I feel like trying to explore those two realms of like pain and death, like are good, like little, are good things
Yeah,
to use to try to discover, reflect. I don't know. They've been powerful for me.
for
So
sure. Yeah, that's great advice. I'm gonna try it this weekend actually.
nice. I love it.
Well, thank you so much, Justin. You're such an inspiration, and this was really fun.
Thank you so much for having me. It's fun to get my first live with you.
Bye. Talk to you soon.